Welcome, all of you, to the Startup Impact Summit, the venture stage. In this session, we are going to have a panel discussion of food ventures, unlock the exponential growth of the alternative protein market. We are incredibly happy to have Andrew, Carrie, and Nick as our speakers. And the panelists will be moderated by Natalie today. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie. I manage the food technology accelerator at Brinc, through which we invest in entrepreneurs who are making our food system more sustainable. We're based here in the Greater Bay Area in Hong Kong, as well as about to launch in China. And I would like for all of the speakers to introduce themselves as well. Perhaps I could start with Andrew. Could you please give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name's Andrew Ive. I'm the Managing General Partner for Big Idea Ventures, and we're focused on plant-based and cell-based meat, seafood and dairy, and technologies across the food supply chain.
Great, thank you. And Carrie, perhaps you could give an introduction of yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie, CEO and co-founder of Avant Meats. We are the first cultivated meat company of Hong Kong and China, and we work on the cultivated meat using cell technology to produce meat without the animal. And we work on the fish species, currently working on different kind of fish products, fish meat, fillet, and fish maw, for example, for the Asian market. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Nick, could you please give an introduction of yourself?
Hi, nice to meet everyone. My name is Nick Cooney, and I'm managing partner with a VC fund called Lever VC. We are based right here in Hong Kong, and we are focused entirely on the alternative protein space. So investing both in plant-based meat and dairy products, as well as cell-cultivated and fermented meat and egg and dairy products around the world, with investments in Hong Kong and the Greater China region, Western Europe, as well as North America and beyond.
Great, thank you so much. Starting off with, could you please tell me why, either as an investor or as an entrepreneur, you have chosen to operate in the alternative protein space? Nick, while I have you, perhaps you could start.
Sure. So for me personally, I've been involved in this space and watching this space for over 15 years, been eating these products for over 15 years as well. And so really have watched this space develop. And so I think there's a couple of reasons to be excited about it. From a change and improve the world perspective, alternative protein is simply dramatically better. Uses far fewer greenhouse gas emissions, generates far fewer greenhouse gas emissions, uses far less land, water, and energy compared to conventional animal protein, much healthier in most cases, more animal friendly. So there's a lot of good social benefits. But also from the financial perspective, it's a sector that's growing very quickly. So in mainland China, for example, plant-based meat and dairy is already an 18 billion USD market in terms of annual sales. In Europe and the United States, it's growing very quickly, growing 24% year over year in the United States and growing at nearly at that rate in Europe. And all the projections, if you look at projections from Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, UBS, Barclays, others, all of these investment banks and research agencies are projecting the space is going to continue to grow very significantly for at least the next 10 years, if not beyond that. So from both of those perspectives, it's a very exciting space to be investing into.
Great, thank you. Carrie or Andrew, why have you chosen to operate in this alternative protein space?
Go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, so it starts with a personal story a bit. My background is not exactly in the food nor the science part. I've changed to plant-based diet a few years ago, and primarily because of the reason I see that the way that we procure meat from animal is not sustainable. It simply use a lot of resources, and the mechanism is simply not efficient. And with the global population expanding and also with more disposable income, the demand for meat has been increasing. I myself personally happy to remove meat and dairy and other animal products from my plate. I have been trying to do a lot of other community works to promote that, and I found that I cannot push people to change in a short period of time, although in long term I see that more people will be moving on to more plant-based in the choice of food, or combination of plant-based and meat as well. So when I come across the idea of using this technology, which has become more available in the past decade because of the original application in the medical field, the stem cell technology, tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, etc. It makes it a lot more feasible now technologically, with a lot of the science in the background developed, etc. So it become available now in the recent years that using this method, we can produce meat without the animals in the picture, and the efficiency drastically improved because of that, and the whole environmental impact is very drastically reduced. And I see it's a very promising solution. And for the general population, of course, I see in the future there will be multiple way of getting protein from plants, from animals, and it is not a binary world. It is many different ways, and we are working on cultivated meat. Take into the situation that there's still quite a bit of a portion of the population would want to have meat. Animal product on the plate, and so we would like to offer a option for them as a solution to the environmental challenges that conventional animal agriculture has imposed on the environment.
Thank you. And Andrew?
Sure. The points that Nick made and Carrie made in terms of the environment, the size of market, and so on are obviously very, very important. A couple of additional points that really excite us at Big Idea Ventures is that, 10 years ago, the plant-based category was basically tofu and a few other very sort of bland ingredients. And what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years, it's really kind of grabbed my attention as someone kind of central to the kind of innovation space in food, is that there are lots of entrepreneurs out there like Carrie and others who are kind of creating amazing products that sort of have the ability to replicate the kind of animal-based products that we've used to eating in our cultures and have been a central part of our diets for, hundreds and hundreds of years. But these entrepreneurs have been able to come up with some amazing products that taste like, look like, have the texture of these kind of animal proteins, and yet there's a far lower impact on the environment. There's a much better health story in terms of saturated fats and cholesterol and other things. Also, just great tasting products, despite the fact that they're made from plants. And the doctors out there are telling us that we need to be getting more plants kind of into our diet. So it's a really kind of a win-win situation. One of the things we've been really focused on at Big Idea Ventures is bringing the right partners together to make this kind of ecosystem around plant-based work. So, for example, bringing Tyson and Beulah and other large companies together around, developing this kind of explosion of creativity from entrepreneurs in the plant-based space. We're really excited about the opportunity to substitute, the traditional animal foods with great tasting, well-priced, amazing plant and cell-based foods. It's a really exciting, moment in history from a food perspective.
Thank you. And I definitely would echo and agree with all of the sentiments. It's great to see that a lot of people who operate in this space are mission aligned. They really believe in in building an alternative which can really satisfy consumer demand while making it a much more environmentally and ethically sustainable choice. So as a result of that, I think people are more collaborative for it, so which is great. Another question I had is, could you please share a little bit more along those lines? So you've seen so many innovative companies. What are the most interesting or innovative companies you've come across in this space, and what really differentiates them from their competitors? Perhaps also to Carrie, could you please elaborate a little bit more on what you do and how you differ from your competitors?
So go ahead first. Okay, so yes, indeed, we are definitely not the first cultivated meat company in this world. When we started, there are a number of them in the West already. In Asia, there are a couple of them, and not many. And so we look at that for any technology, not just for food, but even more so for food. The localization, the local market, the preferences and the people's behavior, the way they think, the language are very different. Even more so for food, because it is so close to our culture and preferences that is so different. So when we bring the idea of this concept of cultivated meat to Asia, we really want to maximize this opportunity, which is different. I quote one example. In the West, I think the menu we usually have food like steak, burger or nugget, and in different forms. And in Asia, in China here, the food that we eat, the ingredient, how we relate with our food and how we prepare them and what is our expectation regarding where do we get them from and how do they look are actually very different. So we recognize that it's over a very huge flexibility and opportunity for us. In particular, for example, the product idea. So we do not necessarily need to make very already done like burger or steak, but we can work on a lot of more different other things. And also provide us with a commercialization strategy. That is, it could be interesting angles. Because I think later on we will talk about the price parity situation, etc. So how we differentiate is really maximize and use the advantages and strength of this market dynamic here in Asia to commercialize cultivated meat in a slightly different way, more tailor-made for this region.
Okay. And also tapping into the Asia taste profile and preference.
Yes.
And Andrew and Nick, perhaps you could share a little bit more about some of the most interesting and innovative companies you've seen in this space.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah. So, sorry. As I started, so we've invested in about 25 companies in the plant-based, cell-based space. It's very, if I choose, 2 or 3, I'm going to get beaten up by the other kind of 23. A couple that just sort of spring to mind focused on, for example, the Asia market, which is probably relevant to our audience. One is a company that we invested in very, very young. I think we were one of the first investors, is Shock Meat, SHIOK Meat out of Singapore. They're the first cell-based meat company in Asia, as far as I understand it. They're focused on crustacea, so shrimp, lobster, crab in particular. They're probably about 18 months away from being commercially viable because they're focused on a B2B kind of execution. We also invested in Zen Meat out of China, which has been called now the Impossible of China. They have a pork product, and they recently launched a crayfish, a plant-based crayfish product. So that's Zen Meat, ZHEN or ZHEN Meats. The third company is Future Foods, which is spelled PHUTURE Foods, which is a plant-based pork product focused on the Asia market. originally out of Malaysia and also Hong Kong, and they're growing across the Asia market as well. So all three of those companies are amazing. We've got 22 other companies that were super amazing too. So if they're watching this, please don't think I didn't choose you, but I did focus on some kind of Asian companies in particular.
Thank you. And Nick?
Sure. So for Lever VC, there's kind of two large buckets of companies that we invest in. So one bucket would be companies on the plant-based side that are producing plant-based meat, milk, other dairy products, eggs, etc. And these companies are ones that they may or may not have some very unique IP, but they have an excellent formulation. So the product tastes really good, and they're growing very quickly with consumers. So prior to Lever VC, myself and my partner, we've been investing in the alternative protein space for 5 and 6 years, respectively. So we had made early investments in companies like Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, Memphis Meats on the cell-based side, and others that have grown and done very well. So on the plant-based side, we like companies that can be category winners, right? So the best or one of the two best tasting in the category they're in and the geography that they're in. The second bucket, which would be that higher tech side, whether it's cell-cultivated meat, fermented animal protein, or so on, is the other bucket we invest in. And so those are the ones that perhaps could be viewed as a bit more interesting because they are higher tech. And so a couple companies that we've invested in this bucket, and obviously we've invested because we think what they're doing is really exciting and really like the teams. So one is Avant. We were very pleased to lead the seed round for Avant last year. And one of the things that we really like about Avant, as well as the other companies in the sector we've invested in, is at this point there's about 50 to 60 companies around the world working to grow real meat, egg, or dairy proteins from cellular agriculture or fermentation. And the big question there is, what price point are they going to be able to get to? We know that these products can be produced, cell-based pork, beef, chicken, fish maw, all other sorts of products have been produced. The question is, will the price point get to a point that the market can accept? And so we really get excited by companies that have a very large total addressable market if they can get the price point down. But even if they can't get the price down to meet commodity pricing, they have other markets they can address. So a company like Avant that can sell products into the luxury seafood space, things like fish maw, shark's fin, etc., where the price point is extremely high, and technically these products are easier to produce from cell cultivation. Or the whole marine protein space, where these prices are particularly high. So whole marine proteins used in things like beauty drinks or personal care, skin care, wound care, where a company like Avant is essentially guaranteed to have a lower price point than the competition while still having a more customizable product and a more pure product. So those are the sort of companies that we get excited in this space. Another one that just announced a raise of a fuller seed round is Turtle Tree Labs, based in Singapore. So first company in the world producing real milk, both cow's milk as well as human breast milk via cell cultivation. And very interesting. Obviously, the dairy market is a massive market. And so if they can get the price points down, they've got a massive market there. But even if they can't get the price point low enough for that market, you have this huge market, $62 billion infant formula market, where there is literally no company in the world right now that's able to offer real human breast milk as part of that infant formula, because logistically it's just not feasible. So they're doing something that no one has done before and has a huge amount of opportunity. So those are some of the examples of companies that we get quite excited by.
Thank you. And while we're on this topic, I think, of cultivated meat and price point, Carrie, perhaps this is more a question for you, is that in this space, a lot of players have cited challenges related to exactly that, unit economics and other sort of barriers to scalability. So how would you address these concerns to your investors?
So there are two challenges, right? The price points as also the scale. For the first, as Nick has mentioned, I have to give a bit more context. The cost reduction is multiple steps. So first of all, we remove the most expensive ingredient, which is also animal-based. We need to get rid of that anyway. So that is the major cost driver. It's over 90% of the cost of the production of the cell, and that is called fetal bovine serum, is getting from young calf. And so removing that already drastically reduce the cost to a certain level. However, compared to meats that we conventionally consume, like chicken and pork, it is still very far away. And of course, the other way is to also replace the pharmaceutical grade of ingredient with food grade ingredients, and that is the second task. And of course, the bioprocesses need to be improved so that we can use the very expensive ingredient more efficiently at a lower volume to produce the same amount of cell or protein. And last but not least is also the further scale up and economy of scale, which is a loop that rely on the market demand and how that we can bulk order and everything and make things further cheaper. So to give an idea that why Nick and Andrew may have mentioned that the cost reduction down to the very low cost meat will be taking a few years time. So in that case, we realized that in day one, we build our strategy, commercial strategy around that, because unit economy is important. If we sell 1 kg, we lose $100 per kg, even $1 or $2, it doesn't make sense. So the fortunate way is that the Einstein's relativity does apply in other aspects of life, including food. So it is only relative to food that we replace. So in this case, we try to look out for our first pilot product candidate to begin with, which is at a higher price prawn. For example, the fish maw, conventionally in Hong Kong, we go to the Shangwan market, different fish, they get different price fish maw. The most expensive one can be over $2,000 per kg in dehydrated form, and the even cheaper one could be a few $100 per kg. So that gives us a very good comparison cost. As long as we reach a price near to that, even though we're not really down to a few dollars per kg, we can start selling without losing money on the unit economy. So that is one of our commercial strategies. So to let our investor and other people know that that's our only first product that we need to stress. So that will help us like a bridge to go from early revenue to later on when we cost continue to go down, then we can do more lower, more budget-friendly price product. For example, now we are developing the fish fillet prototype that will definitely be selling at a lower price, but we are developing the technology. Once our costs reach that point, we can start selling that. So that is our strategy for the unit economy and for scalability. And we know that the pharmaceutical, the way that we grow cell is a tiny, small scale. It could be even for cell therapy, it could just be a few 50 or 100 liter bioreactor. So in our case, we developed a proprietary solution, which is a patent pending approach to improve the bioprocesses so that we can actually both increase the density of the cell that we grow, as well as we can do that in a more scalable way, meaning that we do not need to start with a multi-100 or 1,000 liter bioreactor, but we can do a more like modular approach. So that is our own proprietary solution to address this problem.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think given, despite these challenges that we've cited and addressed, the alternative protein sector as a whole has been very active recently, with both cultivated meat and plant-based meat companies raising capital very successfully at high multiples. Perhaps more directed at Nick and at Andrew is, could you shed some insight into what's really driving this trend? Do you think this growth is sustainable, or do you think the space is overvalued? Andrew?
Actually, I went first last time. Why don't we let Nick have a swing at the ball?
Okay.
So
pass the buck.
My personal opinion is that, like any space where there is an increasing amount of interest and there is real opportunity and real sector growth, you have both side by side. You have real underlying and growing value, which is the reason there's more and more capital coming into the space. just the past 3 or 4 years, there's been several billion USD invested into the alternative protein sector. But because of that interest, you also have a number of investors who are not very well educated about the space. So they know there's something there in alternative protein, but in terms of knowing all the companies and opportunities out there and being able to judiciously choose the best deals and the appropriate valuations, they just don't have the sector knowledge to do that. So they'll make a bet that's not a necessarily great company or a valuation that's just very unreasonable. So you have both of those things coexisting side by side. And so for us, for Lever VC, as a fund focused entirely on the alternative protein sector, where myself and my partner have been investing into the space for 5 and 6 years across 30 plus deals at this point, certainly we think one of the values that we bring to our LPs is that experience of working in the field for over 15 years, investing in it for over 5 years, and being able to make those decisions. So yeah, I think both of those are existing side by side.
And they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. Andrew, would you have anything to add to that?
Sure. So I certainly see a kind of a groundswell of investor interest in this category. I do think that it's useful to have people like us and Nick, myself, and others who have been investing in the food space for quite some time to help guide and curate those opportunities. But I also see a lot of capital coming through from the corporate strategics, companies that we have close relationships with. I see companies like Cargill, like Bunge. Bill Gates recently invested in biomilk on the breast milk side of things. So we do see educated and experienced larger players coming into the category from a funding perspective. Interestingly, the first quarter of this year, more money was put into plant-based and cell-based food businesses than the entire year previous. So the funds coming in are continuing to increase. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, some people are being driven by the environmental climate change aspects. So Gates and Bezos and others would be kind of those types of people. Others are being driven by the fact that consumers globally are shifting towards plant-based. And it's not just a kind of a momentary blip in consumption. It's actually a shift. It's a shift in consumption towards plant-based foods. We've seen it increasing dramatically in North America. We've seen it increasing dramatically in Europe. We're starting to see it in tier 1 cities like Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing. And I also think the Chinese government have already made pronouncements in the last few months that they will be moving more aggressively towards innovation in the plant-based and cell-based food space. So it's a dramatic shift in consumption globally. And I think that's why these prices from the best and the most innovative companies and the valuations are increasing, because it's not just a momentary change, it's a global shift in consumption. And a lot of the large food companies are not ready for it. They're not ready for it with great products. They're not yet ready for it with true innovation. And that innovation is coming through from the kind of companies that we're investing in, the very young, aggressive, quick-moving companies who are literally on the cutting edge of innovation in the plant and cell-based space.
I think related to that, as you mentioned, some of these companies are very young when you do choose to invest in them. So maybe perhaps, at an accelerated level, at a very early stage when a company has demonstrated very limited traction, what do you really look for in a company when you choose to work with them? I know for us, we look a lot at the founder, but I don't know if you had, any more insight to shed on that.
Me or Nick?
You first, Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So for example, we have an office in New York that's focused on the North America market. We have an office in Singapore that's focused on the Asia market. We'll be opening other offices throughout Asia very shortly. We're very interested in, bridging that innovation gap between Asia and North America. And one of the things we're looking for when we look at companies to invest in is a big idea. And that's really why we've even kind of come up with a name for our company. The first thing, everyone talks about team, we invest in teams and everyone says the same thing. And yes, of course, the team, the founder, the vision is absolutely critical. But from our point of view, we're looking for companies that will bring a transformation across the world. We're looking for businesses and technologies and products that will appeal to consumers in mainland China, in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, in Iowa, in New York, in Paris. We're looking for businesses that will ultimately become a global platform. So big ideas, big vision, big opportunity, because from our point of view, it's about, making the world a better place. And you can't do that from a regional perspective. You need to join the dots between Asia, North America, Europe, South America, and so on. And we do that through great tasting foods that are culturally relevant in the kind of key markets.
Thank you. And Nick, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I'd just add to that for us, for Lever VC, the answer would differ a bit based on whether talking about the higher tech companies or the plant-based meat and dairy companies. So maybe to focus just on the latter. So certainly all the obvious things, absolutely, the people involved, the team, the addressable market, the things you would typically look for. One thing I think that's quite important to keep in mind is at the end of the day, these are food products. And so while you need a lot of other things, you are not going, no matter how good the team is, how good the marketing is, et cetera, you're not going to get that far unless you've got a really excellent tasting product. So for us, certainly tasting the product directly, but more importantly than that, looking at what is the market reaction to this product. Is it the best or one of, say, the two best products in its category and in its broader regional geography? That's important to us. We wouldn't invest in a company that didn't meet those criterion. Yeah, again, at the end of the day, these are food products. And so if it was a tech-based investment, we might look at how many new users they're adding per month or something like that. Mm-hmm. Here we have similar metrics. We can look at what the sales look like in the stores they're in, how those are trending over time. Are people going back and buying it again and again? Are they talking about the product on social media? Those signs that people like the product, they think it tastes great, and they want to keep buying it.
Yeah, definitely. With food, first thing is always the taste. So another question I had was considering alternative protein market landscape, I think globally, can be said that certain markets, maybe the US or Europe, are a little bit more developed, and Asia is just catching up. There are pockets of innovation definitely in Singapore, and as we mentioned before, where China has really put pressure on and to catch up in terms of this innovation. What do you think we collectively can do, whether it's investors, entrepreneurs, governments, to be growing this space in this region? Maybe Carrie, we'll pick on you to go first this time.
Yeah, okay. So we more speaking from a startup position in regarding what we think it would be great to help not just us, but the ecosystem developing would be multiple things. I think, first of all, that one thing is, I think it also is a hurdle for other companies around the world is the regulatory, because we talk about cultivated meat in this case, even it would be the case for certain plant-based, because that use new technology to produce protein and to be combined with the other plant ingredient. And in those cases, the new regulatory framework will become very important. Without that, it's just like if you refer to fintech or blockchain, there have been a period of time where the regulation is not yet developed, and If it did drag on for too long, it could greatly impact companies, startup already working on that, or even very close to commercialization. Is a huge risk. In our position, having a product, a capacity, and the whole team to sustain and without a way to go to revenue is a huge risk. So I think that is one thing. We as a startup might be in a little bit more passive position, although we can lobby and try to engage with the relevant department a bit more. But at the end of the day, that is very key important. And the other, I think, for ecosystem for both China, Shanghai, Hong Kong, I think the talents pools, we need to grow them a lot. I think Hong Kong's starting to emphasize a lot on the STEM, STEM students to consider more of different career path in this way. I think in the mid to long term, it will be definitely useful because the world and the food world is moving towards a more high-tech approach, either cell-based or fermentation or other thing. It is a very promising career path and direction, and it involves more education and more opportunity to build this talent pool and talent ecosystem. And the free flow of them is actually very important as well.
So regulatory support and also talent front, definitely two key points. And Andrew, Nick, would you, well, who's going first this time?
It's Nick's turn.
Okay.
All right, I'll jump in. So I think ultimately what we need more of is we need more Carries. So we need more very good entrepreneurs in the greater Asia region. If we look at the companies, if we look at just the companies in general, but especially if we look at the companies that have done well in the space in Europe, North America, et cetera, nearly to a company, almost every single one of those is a company that was started by a founder or founding team that really believe in the space from a personal perspective. They believe in the impact it has and the positive impact it has. And that's what motivated them to start the company and motivated them and inspired them to be able to go through what you need to go through to build a successful company. And so I think that that's what we need more of, or to the extent we have more of that, that's the extent to which we will see this space develop more quickly and more effectively in the sense of a greater number of high quality deals, high quality companies and sector growth here in Asia.
More motivated entrepreneurs, definitely. And Andrew?
Sure. So one of the things we've been really keen to do is to help build the ecosystem. So, when we got started in the Singaporean market, we made sure to partner with ESG, EDB, Temasek. Temasek were one of our first investors, kind of a linchpin investor in our fund, actually. We've been really very focused on helping to build that ecosystem because I think that's going to be one of the critical things. Ultimately, you can have the entrepreneurs being innovative, and that's certainly something that we support through our Accelerator program in Singapore, our Accelerator program in New York City. But ultimately, those food products need to be brought to market. So you need the right partners from a distribution perspective. You need the right co-manufacturers. You need the right companies that have the right relationships in retail, food service, and other things. So from our point of view, it's about building that ecosystem across Asia, and that's one of the things we've spent the last 3 or 4 years, strongly building. And it's about recognizing the skill sets and the qualities of the large food companies and their strengths and capabilities, particularly around sourcing ingredients, supply chain, distribution. But coupling that together with the innovation and the entrepreneurialism of the younger companies, you need to bring that machine or the pieces of that together to make it successful. And that's one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time building relationships with the large food companies.
Yeah, and bringing all these multiple stakeholders together definitely is not an easy feat. One that we're working on together. Finally, I think one last thing, perhaps again, we can start with Carrie, since you are in this position. If there's one piece of advice you can give to an entrepreneur hoping to start a business in the plant-based or cultivated meat space, what would it be?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of challenges, and the landscape definitely becoming more competitive in the position of the startup, and which is good, and ecosystem becoming more diverse. And I would say I do echo with both Nick and Andrew, like the personal drive is personal determination is very important. And then the next is really getting creative and really frame the company your own position in a way that it maximizes your own competitive advantage, either where you're located or your personal previous career background and network, whatever. Make the maximum leverage out of them, and instead of just looking at what the market is, now is the most popular is this certain kind of plant-based meat, and just replicating that is not going to lead to particular interesting edge, not just in front of investor, but probably in front of the consumers as well in the future. So think more thoroughly about different direction and be more creative, and just don't get too hung up with the bigger trend and where everyone's going. Just decide on your own, and if you do your job well, how you differentiate your uniqueness will come through in other ways.
Yep, definitely taking a long-term driven vision approach, I think, is crucial. I think this time it is Andrew's turn to go first, if my memory serves me right. And one piece of advice from you, Andrew?
Yeah, so my piece of advice for entrepreneurs is basically to reach out. We are out there looking for great entrepreneurs. We want to help them. We want to give them money. We want to give them access to, our ecosystem that we're building. And there's a lot of folks out there who are very keen to support entrepreneurs, to help them, to make them successful, and to kind of make sure that their companies are growing well and stably and providing great products to the market. So my advice to entrepreneurs is to reach out, say hello, and ask for help. There's always people, especially in the food industry. It's a very collaborative industry. It's probably the most collaborative industry I've ever been a part of. People really want to support each other. It's not a very competitive, aggressive industry. If you reach out, if you're proactive, if you're friendly, normally people will help you and want the best for you. So the one piece of advice: reach out to us at Big Idea Ventures. We'd love to help you.
Great. And Nick?
Yeah, I hope you'll forgive a two-part answer. The first part sounds more superficial, but if you look at all the companies that are doing well, they all have this as one of their components, and that is great graphic design and brand identity. Obviously, you can have that and be not a company that's going to succeed, right? It's certainly not sufficient, but it is a necessary component, and it's one that I've also often seen early stage entrepreneurs and companies not put nearly as much attention into as I think it warrants, based on the value it has for getting investors interested, for getting the media interested, for getting customers interested. But in addition to that, and this is definitely along the lines of what Andrew noted, I would say to start a company, right? Most of the companies in this space that have done really well, nearly all of them were not started by people who had significant food industry experience. Even some of the companies that are on the higher tech side, they, or at least one of the founders, may have had not a huge amount of experience running a company, right? Obviously, they need to have the right scientific background, but they might not have previously started and run a company. But don't let that stop you. That hasn't stopped the founders of all the companies that have succeeded in this space, and it shouldn't stop you. And as Andrew said, there's a lot of support and interest out there in supporting entrepreneurs and startups, even if it's at the ideation stage. So Natalie, obviously Brinc and Lever VC have been in touch a lot lately because We very recently launched an investment vehicle and accelerator in China. And so for attendees that are located in mainland or Hong Kong or Taiwan, we are looking to invest in a lot of great alternative protein entrepreneurs and startups in this space. You have folks like Brinc, like Lever VC with great experience and networks. We also have some great corporate partners like COFCO, the largest food company in China, Ely Group, the largest dairy company in China, and a number of others. So those resources are in place. There's capital there. There's a desire to start to support great entrepreneurs. So go ahead and do it. And if you want to do it, but you're not exactly sure the best approach or the best market niche to go after, feel free to reach out, email us, set up a call. We'd be happy to chat with you about that.
Thank you so much. I think on that note, I think that about wraps up the session, but what's the best way to keep in touch with all of you? Nick, through email, perhaps? Or, yeah.
Sure. So my personal email is nick, N-I-C-K, @levervc.com. If you're on WeChat, I'm also on WeChat at Nick Cooney. And you can also see more about Lever VC at levervc.com and reach us through the site. Or for that China investment fund and vehicle, leverfund.cn. Any of those ways work great.
Great, thank you. Carrie, yourself, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to reach out to us. Either my personal email address, carie.chan@avantmeats.com, or go to our website, which is avantmeats.com, and you can leave us your information that we can keep you updated of our latest development.
Andrew?
Sure. So LinkedIn is good. Big Idea Ventures on LinkedIn, bigideaventures.com, and my email is andrew@bigideaventures.com. Not very creative, but it works. So if anyone needs to reach out, those are some of the ways.
Same as me. For us, it's brinc.io. My email is Natalie, natalie.lung@brinc.io. So please feel free to reach out. And thank you very much, everyone, for their time. We've had a great discussion, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Natalie.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie.